all things New Orleans Saints. This is Who Dat Discussion.
Who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Say they gon' be them same.
Powered by Overtime Media.
Hello and welcome back into another off-season edition of the Who Dat Discussion. As always, my name is Andrew, and we have a jam-packed episode for you guys in this one. It's Pro Bowl and Senior Bowl week. In this one, you have 10 Saints playing in the Pro Bowl. Senior Bowl is going to be integral to looking at those QBs, O-linemen, receivers, and then flipping over to the defense, secondary, defensive line, all that fun stuff. The Saints will definitely be looking at those players. Also, Super Bowl is set. 49ers and Chiefs will be taking on each other for the 54th Super Bowl in the NFL's 100th year. Obviously, wish the Saints were there, but it should be a good game. And look, I'm going for the Chiefs in this one. I'll get into probably in it more next week. I don't know. 49ers are just not my team. Obviously, rivals of the Saints. Just not something I want to see them hold up the trophy. I'd be a little pissed off if that happened for sure, but I think that's really interesting. And then also one more big thing, we are now on YouTube. We got video now, so the podcast will be put up there, and that's obviously really great. So definitely subscribe to that channel. We'll also have film studies up later on the off season, as well as live streams, all that stuff. Sorry, it's just remembering that there. So that's obviously going to be a good next kind of aspect of the podcast that wasn't there before. So that's all really good stuff. So I think we should just get right into this. We are going to take a break from like the recaps, the internal recaps. So we're going to do, we did the we did it basically the whole team besides secondary. So we'll do the secondary, and then we will wrap up that section, move over to the free agency, then draft. We'll probably do that next week or the week after. So definitely we will be getting to that once Pro Bowl, Senior Bowl week is done. So first we'll start with some news, as it was really interesting because you had Mickey Loomis speak at the Senior Bowl, A lot of players at the Pro Bowl. They'll be speaking in the next incoming days, so that'll be very interesting to see as well. But starting with the Pro Bowl, 10 Saints players there. Day one practice wasn't obviously much football going on, but you got to see Brees and Russell Wilson there. The skills showdown, you saw some guys practicing for that, so that was really cool. Only one Saints player will be integrally in the skills showdown with Cameron Jordan, but also everyone will play in the dodgeball. So very interesting that they didn't want to put Michael Thomas or Drew Brees in the throw and catch for like one-hand catch, stuff like that, and then also for precision passing, obviously. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, look, they're just playing to have fun, and I respect that. So, look, I know it's not the biggest game, and obviously it doesn't matter for anything, but to see 10 Saints players, to see Drew Brees throw it, Michael Thomas catch it, that's always really good things. And look, obviously it doesn't mean much, but still, it's a fun day, and you get to see families, and you get to see more of the personal side of the player, so that's obviously always good there, and to me that's great. But I think the more meat of the news is at the Senior Bowl, as it to me was extremely interesting. First of all, a lot of great prospects on hand, and I think that's really big. Obviously the NFL getting those prospects, and just I think the NFL game is in a great hands with all these young players. Obviously a lot of great stuff from the quarterback position, from the offensive line, the wide receiver, some really great receivers. Saw some LSU players, so a lot of you Saints fans will be happy with that. To me, it's just extremely interesting, and to me the most interesting thing from this day here on Wednesday from practice number 2 was GM Mickey Loomis speaking on the Saints. He said a ton of stuff, but the one thing I really want to hone in on is he said the Saints want to keep Drew Brees, and that means they finished that, and they said Drew Brees over Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe that doesn't mean for next year at least. And again, I think that it means a lot. Look, I'm on the Drew Brees train, and I know some people aren't, and that's fine. But it seems like Mickey Loomis made his pick. Now, maybe he's saying maybe he wants Brees as a backup. That could also be something just sneaking around the question. But and he said it's going to be different. It's no different than the last 2 years. It's not going to be. If you take it for granted, it won't be easy, but we're going to take it hard and we'll make it easy, basically. And again, I think that he's going to get his contract. You could also franchise tag him. A ton of options for him, a ton of options for the Saints, but to me, that was just extremely interesting. Obviously, he was upset with the 13-3 finish and losing the first round. That just stinks. And on the financial challenges with many expensive players coming up, he said that, I prefer to have challenges when we're successful than when we're not. And look, that's something definitely true there. But look, it was obviously disappointing. It was a disappointing season. He definitely said that. So again, that's fair. And look, he said he's excited for the organization, excited about our team, and again, it's impressive what the Saints have done, but I think they obviously got to take that next step, and it's going to be very interesting there. Look, the Saints are definitely they're willing to be patient with Drew Brees as he molds his future, but if he plays, the Saints want him in the room. That's interesting to look at, and to me, that's something we definitely got to look at, because that's extremely interesting. If Brees plays, and he goes on the next year, it's going to be extremely different if Teddy Bridgewater was in the locker room or if a rookie was here. And we'll obviously see their ultimate goal here when it comes to their future in the quarterback when the draft really comes. If they draft a QB, maybe one of these three guys that will be playing on Saturday in the Senior Bowl. Very interesting, but again, I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think the Saints, they got to look at all avenues. If Drew Brees is a quarterback, I trust the team. If they say Teddy Bridgewater, maybe it's not my choice, but I trust Mickey Loomis more than my opinion. So, again, my opinion is keep Brees. It just, to me, it makes sense. I went over it in another episode. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. But to me, extremely interesting, and the Saints definitely got to look at that. And but it seems like they're picking Drew Brees. Maybe they're not. Maybe he's just skidding around the question. That's possible. But to me, really interesting stuff. But now let's get into the Senior Bowl. And I want to start talking about the draft. Now, this is probably the only episode, these next two episodes, where we're going to be talking about the draft, and until, not after free agency for sure, but definitely after we talk about free agency and kind of give our free agency overview. So, again, this is very preliminary, but it's the one time before the combine that you get to see most of these prospects together at the same time. So, that's really big. So, North and South, we're going to go through basically each team and each position, and we'll look on team one. Who are the Saints looking at? Who am I watching at? See if the Saints have, and then we'll flip it over to the South and see what we're doing on that team. We'll basically go by position. Starting off with the quarterbacks, we'll go receivers. Then we'll do offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen. We'll do a little tight ends. Flip it over to the defense. Do a little D-line corner, and then we'll wrap up the episode here. But first, let's just get right into this. Starting off with the quarterbacks. Three big quarterbacks. You're going to have Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. Those three guys the Saints have got to look at. I think 2 out of the 3 will fall. 224. I think Jordan Love and Hurts will. Herbert may not. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. If he does, he's a pro-ready prospect. He's really a good player, and I think the Saints may want to look at him. Look, starting with the North, Jordan Love played for Utah State. And Jordan Love is definitely an interesting player here. He's a player that's not from the biggest school. I mean, Utah State's not a small school, definitely a Division I, but it's even Power 5, but definitely not from like this big Alabama or LSU like Joe Burrow is, or Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma and Alabama. Obviously, it's kind of different, but he's definitely been a player that he can come up in here, and he does have a ton of skills. He's athletic, and people say he looks a lot like Patrick Mahomes. He's got a hell of an arm. And he's a player that can throw the ball down the field vertically, and he's good accuracy down the field. That's pretty big, and the Saints haven't seen that in a while. So he's a player that the Saints could definitely look at. He has an arm, and he has a great arm for sure, so that's really interesting. He's a playmaker. And now look, sometimes it doesn't work out with playmakers. Sometimes they just don't go to that next step. But that arm, it speaks. And I think a lot of people definitely think that. Now, I don't know if I pick Love, is he my perfect prospect? No, but the arm talent's there. And then you're hoping that Sean Payton could kind of groom him, and that's kind of interesting. There were kind of off-the-field reports that one of his room smelled like marijuana, but I don't know if that really matters to me. That's, something that, in college is one thing. In the pros, get older, those stupid things don't happen. So I think that is extremely interesting and something to look at. But he's a player and he's a baller, and that's something you got to look at for sure. And I think he's a player that can come up in here and do some really good job. He's got a hell of an arm, and I think that's a big thing. And you'll probably see it on display. And if he's able to definitely take the next step, being able to, in recognition, be a little higher throughout the college level, when you go to the pros, recognition has to be better. A lot of things have to be better, but if he's willing to put in the work, he can definitely do it. He's got the athletic talent. He's got the arm talent. And not everyone has that. So, to me, he's going to be a definitely interesting player to look at there. Justin Herbert's more of your pro prospect to me. He's not. Look, he's got a good arm too. Don't get me wrong, but he's the more polished player. He's definitely less coaching is going to go into him than any of these guys. But to me, he's got the lowest ceiling, highest floor out of all these guys. He's a good player. To me, he's going to be a top 10 pick. And again, I think he's going to be a starting quarterback probably from day one. He's a player that knows his stuff. He's started until his senior year. He's played it. He's done it. And to me, that's really big. He's been able to, his arm talent's great. His recognition is good. And to me, if he was there at 24, I'd pick him. I do. And because to me, he's the best prospect left on the table if he goes to 24. Saying that Joe Burrow's not left or something like that. But to me, that's what I'm getting out of Herbert right now. And I think that he can come in and he can be Drew Brees' replacement for sure. Even if you get Drew Brees, I'd pick him, have Drew Brees kind of definitely look. I think he could start day one, but mold him a little more and then send him off. And I think that can be really big for the Saints and company there because I think he could play. And I think that's someone to look forward on the South side for sure. Also on the South is Jalen Hurts. And I think Jalen Hurts, again, playmaker. And I think like a lot of LSU fans are saying, well, he did awful against LSU. I mean, LSU's team is extremely good, and his team wasn't as good. He's going to get out of the pocket. He's going to do some crazy things. Reminds me of Lamar Jackson a lot. I think he has a good arm, though. I do. I think he's a player that can definitely throw the ball down the field. He could be a Lamar Jackson. He also could be a Johnny Manziel. He also could be a Robert Griffin III. You got to look at kind of all of them. I don't know. He'd definitely be a risk. First round, I probably wouldn't take that risk with him. Second round, if he's had a second round pick, I'd say, yeah, sure. Early second round, I'd go for it. But I don't know if you want to. It's tough. If you want to put an offense around him, it's bordering it. Now, maybe you don't want. Maybe you're fine with doing that, and you can limit him for sure. I think, but he's a baller, he's a gamer, he's a winner. But I don't know if you can build an NFL offense around him and be successful. Now, people said the same thing about Lamar Jackson, but there's only one Lamar Jackson, and there have been a lot more quarterbacks like those college quarterbacks. Now, some of them work in the pros, the majority don't. So I would stay away from him. I think Jordan Love's kind of like the mix of both players. He's got the playmaking ability, but he's not like a running QB. I'd say great arm talent. Herbert, to me, is the more pro-ready, pro-style quarterback that Sean Payton likes playing that West Coast. And then also you have Jalen Hurts as kind of the far athletic side, far college style, kind of the read option, all that stuff. Get out in space, make plays. And I think he can do that as well. It's going to be interesting to see all three. I'll definitely be on Twitter typing away about all three of these guys, see what I see. To me, I think the footwork, I think Herbert's got the footwork. I think Love's got... Look, they both got to work on Love and Hurts. I think it's not bad, Love, but again, I would rank them as Herbert, Love, Hurts as my three going into the game. I'll tell you guys coming out of it, what do I think and who do I see. Jalen Hurts could star in this game, though. He's a player that's going to get out in space, probably make some plays. Definitely a lot of interesting stuff there from Hurts, and I could see me falling in love with him. I could see a lot of Saints fans falling in love with him. I don't know if I make that pick at 24. It's definitely an interesting one. I don't know if he makes this 24 either. One team will probably fall in love with him, and I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I mean, he's no Joe Burrow. He's no Tua Tagovailoa. Probably no Justin Herbert, but I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting there, and we'll see if 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, and if these are these three guys plus Joe Burrow and Tua. Interesting, but those are guys I would look at as a replacement for Brees. All those guys are going to be first rounders, though, to me, or maybe early second. But for the Saints' sake, it's first round. So the Saints would have to be completely sold on one of these guys to pick them. So very interesting stuff there. Now we're going to move over to the wide receivers, where most of these guys aren't first-round guys. A lot of the first-round guys aren't going to be playing in this episode. So we're looking at a lot of third-round guys, second-round guys. Very interesting. I think some of these guys I think in last year's draft, these guys would be at the top of the draft. And to me, that's really interesting. But first, we'll start with the North with Michael Pittman. Pittman can play. The physicality, the strength, it's there. He doesn't win off the line as much, but he's still a player that's going to come up and do some really good things. And I think that he's a player, kind of reminds me a little Michael Thomas. He can block as well. Great blocker. He's strong with the football after a catch. He's good in contested situations. Kind of a lot of things the Saints need. That we'll see what happens. And I don't know if he's the sunning guy, and look, he can play the slot. He can play a big slot guy, which is big. He can play the X spot as well, which is good. And again, he also plays special teams as well. He's got it all. We'll see what happens. I think the Saints could, if they possibly, I think he's more of a second round guy, but maybe he falls to the third and you pick him up. I kind of want to see what he gets done here, if he can make plays, high point the ball in the Senior Bowl, and kind of see that on action against great prospects. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see. But he's a guy that's going to come up in here. He's reminds me a little of Michael Thomas, good route runner, definitely a guy that is pro ready. The speed is not there officially, so he's not going to pop off in the combine. But if he does, I could see him being a big guy. The physicality is there, the strength is there. It's going to be really interesting as well. And the other guy from the North that I'm looking at is Denzel Mims and Hims, excuse me, I'm sorry there, and he had a really good practice day the last 2 days. He's coming out of Baylor, and Baylor had a bad year last year, so again, his stock went down a little bit, but his burst, his long speed is so good, and good catch radius, great extension, all the stuff you want to hear. Good body control, he can adjust and make catches. He's a guy I want to see. If he can make these separation, that's what the Saints need, just short-term separation. If he can get that burst off the line of scrimmage, win, that's what the Saints need, especially if they have Drew Brees at quarterback. I would like to see the Saints pick him, and I think that would be extremely interesting if they go out and get him, and it's something to look at. And he's a player that, if he can win off the line of scrimmage and get separation in that 20-yard range, he's going to do a lot of great stuff, and I think he could be a possible player that comes up in here. Technical route running is not the best, but again, I think that he could be a really good player. And look, you can work on route running. You can't work on that vertical speed that, he's a former track and field player, track and field star, I really should say. Big explosive player, can break off big plays, give him the screen pass, kind of reminds me of a better version of Deontay Harris. I don't want to say he's Deontay Harris because he's better, but again, his ceiling's huge. If he can get a good coach in there, which the Saints have a good coach, I think he'd go off the charts. To me, you want to get him, and you want to get a free agent receiver. That's a hell of a receiving core right there, and I'd love to see the Saints to double up in that range because I think that could be extremely interesting there. Flipping it over to the south, going down to Van Jefferson, and Van Jefferson has gotten a ton of hype here. He's a player that's coming up in here and doing some really great stuff. He's from Florida, and he's gotten a ton of praise, and I think that's something you definitely should give him. His route running is amazing. Reminds me, again, another player that kind of reminds me of Michael Thomas. The way he can leverage, create angles, sometimes you can't teach that. And the quick feet with good hips, and just makes his releases are NFL caliber already per those scouts. That's what they're saying. They think he's maxed out athletically, which is, kind of what it is. You saw Michael Thomas; they thought he was maxed out athletically. You see what happens there. He as blocker, good blocker as well. He could be a player that you see in the third round to me. He's going to fall into the third round. He's going to be a player you see in the third round. I'd be fine if the Saints picked him or him. Completely different players. But you could see either of these guys. The route running for Van Jefferson is impeccable. Hims has got the speed. This guy's you got to look at. And the last guy is Austin Mack because he's a player that coming off. Look, he's a player that coming off a big injury. And that's just kind of like, it is what it is here. And that stinks because he was going to have probably a big year. Comes off the injury, he's going to definitely drop. And you would think that unless he's back ready to go, we'll see what he does here. Physically imposing receiver at 6'2", 215. He's got 19 career starts, but he lost most of his season due to injury last year. Didn't have the touchdown production throughout his whole career. And he's a pretty good route runner, but doesn't create a ton of separation. May not be a player I want, but I do want to see how he comes off the injury. And it's something because he was coming into the season, he was pretty hyped up. Now, not as much. And he began the season, look, he had 3 receptions in the first 6 games, then after a foot injury, and he was done. It's a player I want to see, and I want to see kind of what he's able to do. And look, if he's healthy and ready to go, it's definitely you want to see it. And you want to see it on the screen. And he could be a player you get even later in the third round. So maybe if you want to get other things in those rounds coming back, he could do some really good stuff there as well. Moving over to the O-line. Again, the interior O-line, the guy I would get, Tyler Biadasz, is not playing in this game. But there's really one guy I'm really looking at and some other guys I'm looking at as well. Ben Bredeson out of Michigan, to me, he can be a plug-and-play starter. Reminds me a lot of Eric McCoy in that respect. I mean, look, he's a player that's going to come up in here, started a ton at Michigan, played the Big Ten, so he's playing that pro-style offense, that grinded-out offense. He's a player that's going to come up in here, do some good stuff. He's good power at the line of attack. He's projects as a starting guard, should be a starting guard. He's versatility that he can play guard, both guards. Saints, that's going to be good for the Saints as well. Wins at the line of scrimmage a ton. He's good at creating gaps and great for rushing concepts, which is really good for the Saints. And also, he's got to work on initial hand strikes, which is, look, if he can get that, he gets the passing down, he's going to be a player that comes up here and does really good things. I would love Biadasz in the first round, but if Bredeson falls, maybe you want to trade up into the second round and get him. That would be huge. He's got no red flags. Look, he's got the power, he's got the athletics. Hand technique is a little shaky, but with time, with the coaching, that can help a ton. And I think he could be a player that, if he drops to where the Saints need him to be, maybe not in the first round, but later, even in the first round, if the Saints get him, not the worst thing in the world there. So to me, interesting stuff from him, and he's definitely the player that I think I would be most happy with. And the other guys, I think you're just kind of looking at the whole O-line here. And he's a player, just some of these players are just guys that maybe later you want to take a chance on them. And that could definitely happen for sure. And guys that are going to be playing in this game to see if they're doing a really good job against some of these guys. That would be very interesting. One guy is Jonah Jackson, from Ohio State. And he's a player that could come up in here, do some stuff. Again, he's a player that his ranking is not going to be as high. You may want to take a chance on him. He's a big guy, 6'7", big, and those guys, they're going to come up in here, do some great stuff, and they look really good on paper, but we'll see if he's for real here. So to me, that's really interesting to see what he can do, kind of see if he can win with that size. The one guy I'm looking at from the South is Ben Bartley, he's just a monster. He's an absolute monster. He's a Division III player. So, again, you may not see him very high, in the draft boards or whatever. But you want the physical players. He's just huge. 6'6", 306. We'll see what the Senior Bowl does. And for him, if the technique is there, sky's the limit for him. It's ridiculous. His athletic times are there. Everything is there. It's just you want to see if he can win at the highest levels. Only they play Division III. So if he could win at the D1 level this week, maybe you go into the draft and you'll be like, well, he can win. No, he probably wouldn't be a player the Saints would pick first round, but maybe if you want to maybe you have another starter there and there's another guy that can kind of groom him to be the starter down the road, something for the Saints to look out for sure. And the final guy I'm looking at is Logan Stenberg. And Logan Stenberg, again, he's a type of player that's going to come up in here. He's not your first pick, he's not your plug and play starter, but he's a player that come up in here and do some really good stuff. He's from University of Kentucky. He's actually he's got the praise of this week from the Senior Bowl. Some people really like him, and again, that's great if you're gonna come up in here and do good at the Senior Bowl. And definitely you want to see do good here. And this is the Kentucky Wildcats, 8-5. Now they did win a bowl game, but they were not like the best team ever. And then he's a player that can definitely do some really good stuff. They think he is the best. Some people think he's the best guard because he's long, he's big. Mauler in the run game, really good in the run game, really good for the interior. This year he was a really consistent pass rusher, made some strides. People think he's a top 50 player now. Some people don't think one of those guys. Some people doesn't think he's a top 5 player. Some people do. I think the Senior Bowl, you're really going to see more of him lock in there. People think he's more of a third-round player. Now, I think I said that he was like a 4 to 6. No, he's a third-round player. Now, he's not as good as Stenberg. He's not as good as Biadaz, but he can maybe come up maybe after them. He's kind of like the next tier. But, again, he's a safe pick, and I think he could be a plug-and-play starter. Maybe, may not be. I don't know. I'm not sold on him yet. I really haven't seen tape on him, so I kind of want to do that. I want to see what he does this weekend, and he's going to be a player that I think we all should look at for sure. He's a player that definitely he improved throughout the year, so you just want to see all that improvement come together for sure. 2 guys I'm looking at for the tight end group. One is Bryson Hopkins. Look, Hopkins is a player that you want to see more of because he's going to be a player from Purdue here. And look, he was one of the Big Ten players of the year. Great tight end. He was, Big Ten tight end of the year. The Big Ten Network called him. He was a player that definitely could be a day 2 candidate. You want that primary target at tight end. He can do it. He's a great route runner for the position, which is something the Saints maybe you want to look at. Jared Cook won't be there forever. He will be there next year, but you don't know really after that. And day 2 candidate, maybe you want him to be that type of player. Again, people compare him to like a Vance McDonald type player. He's athletic, he's off the chart, not really that good of a blocker. They think he has a high ceiling as a receiver, but not really that good of a blocker, so kind of limits. But to me, he could definitely be a player that maybe the Saints want. And I think it's very interesting to look at. And then another player to just look out for is going to be Steven Sullivan from LSU. LSU was running that 2 tight end system a ton. He didn't get a ton of reps. You had Thaddeus Moss in there as well. So maybe with a ton of, he's a big receiver. He's kind of that receiver tight end player and same type of player that Hopkins is. Kind of want to see what he's able to do without Thaddeus Moss opposite him, and maybe he'll have an increased role here. Maybe he'll make some big plays. Just another player I'd love to see. Flipping it over to the defense, you have Carter Coughlin with the defensive line. And he's a player that can come up in here and do some really good stuff. He's a really good athletic player that can come up and win, bend the edge. All that stuff is really what you want to see for sure. He's a player that will win. He's from Minnesota. I forgot to say that as well. He's from Minnesota. He can win, and he's great off the ball. He's a little soft on the point of attack, but besides that, he's a good player. He's a pretty good pass protector that good forcing the edge. He's really good in the running game as well. And to me, you see that you can see the senior in him. He's a player that can come up, knows what he's doing. The technique is there. To me, athletically, look, he's a player that he's definitely good athletically, but I want to see just a little more from him with the technique. But he's a player that definitely has kind of the tools. He understands it. That's very interesting. Now, you want to see him still come along, and obviously a lot more things. And you may want to see him play. He was played in like a 3-4 sometimes, 4-3. Maybe you want to see him more in that 4-3, and maybe he would kind of get a little less with the Saints, a little less snaps. So we'll see where it is for that. So, but again, he's a player that you're looking at as well. And then Alton Robinson, who is extremely raw, but extremely athletic. Alton Robinson's going to come up in here and tear it up from Syracuse. People think he's going to end up with the first round just because his athletics are just off the charts. The drive is there. He reminds me a little of Marcus Davenport. It's just extremely raw. I don't know if you want to put that with the Saints players. He only got 2 stars on the Draft Network. I mean, look, he's his explosive first step. Doesn't really know a lot of his pass moves, though. He bends the edge very well, but he doesn't know a lot. But he'll probably be good in the run game because he's able to spread the edge very well, do some really good stuff. He definitely has a nice pattern, good drive. The problem is that it's a lump of clay. It's not a sculpted piece of clay. And I think you got to definitely look at that as something for sure. Flipping it over to the South, Marlon Davidson's a player that can look at. He's been impressive in these first days of practices, which is very interesting for sure. He supposedly could be a first-round pick. People are saying, I don't know. If he falls to the first round, I wouldn't get him, but he's a player that can do some really good stuff coming out of Auburn. His hometown is in Alabama, in Mobile, where it takes place. 4-star prospect, really what you want to see, there. He's a player that can come up in here. His upper body strength is great. Sometimes he doesn't have that short-term quickness. He doesn't have that extreme great stuff, but people think he's a day 2 candidate, and he's got some big upside. He's got a lot of skills, but I don't know if he's in that great day 1 pick. I don't know. If he goes the first round, that's kind of what it is, but I don't think that. Again, I think he's a player that supposedly he can squeeze inside as well, which is really good as well. Squeeze those boundary ropes to the inside, there, which is very good. Win at the point of attack, that's great. Good outside push ability, really good at bending the edge. That's good stuff. I mean, maybe if you see him in the 3rd round, you go out and pick him. I would not be surprised if the Saints do that, but he's been playing really well in the practices. And also a Javon Kinlaw, he's another player here that, again, he's going to do some really good stuff. I think he's a player that, again, coming from the edge, you're kind of looking at these players, especially the ones, some at the Senior Bowl, as being pretty raw. But this guy has come up in here, and he's an interior defensive lineman, and you see the athletic skills are there. Look, 6'5", 315, but he's extremely explosive. He's kind of the pass rush techniques there. Everything, it's not just he's raw, like some of the guys we said in the past. Everything is there, which is really big. He's going to probably be a first-round pick. He's going to be a player that if you need a starter to that defensive line, maybe the Saints will. But all the tools are there. His mental processing isn't the best. That's his only kind of downfall. But, again, the moves are there. It's like you want to put that lump of clay, that all athletic that we said some people need to be sculpted. His is already there. He's out of South Carolina. He's a player that, to me, he could have a Pro Bowl type player. And that's kind of saying something. To me, he's got, as an interior defensive lineman, the pass rush is there, the run blocking is there, everything's there. People think he's inconsistent because of the mental processing. I don't know about that. I think he's a great player. If the Saints really feel like, though, you needed an interior defensive lineman, maybe you see him there. I just think he's going to go off in this Pro Bowl. So, to me, extremely interesting for that and to kind of see what he's able to do in this game. So, to me, it's something to look forward to for sure. And then we'll look at the secondary here. the one guy I really want to talk about first is Christian Fulton from LSU. He had an amazing year this year. LSU fans will know that. And he's just got the tools. And you really want to see he's had great tape. And he may fall to the Saints. And if you're the Saints, maybe you go out and pick him. And I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. If the Saints get him, if he falls to the Saints, I'd go out and get him. He's got all the traits. He's smart. He's great footwork at the line of scrimmage. Great in press coverage. Can also play a little zone. He's definitely good in those jump ball situations. Only thing, he's not super long, and people think that he would lose 50-50 balls against NFL-type players. But do you really know he will? I don't know. That's to me, it's not really a fair kind of negative on him, that we don't know if he can win 50-50 balls because we don't know if his physicality is going to get there. But to me, he's not just got the physicality part, he's got the athleticism, he's got the anticipation, he's got the mental, which is obviously really big. And I want to see what he's able to do and kind of lock down some of these receivers from LSU. And if he falls to the Saints at 24, would I love a receiver? Yes. Would I love an interior defensive lineman? Yes. But if he's there, I think he's going to have a Marshawn Lattimore type impact on this team, so you definitely got to look at that for sure. But other guys are like Terrell Burgess. He's going to be a player that Saints players are definitely Saints fans should definitely look at. I think he's a player that we actually pick because he can play special teams. He could also play cornerback or safety. Kind of reminds me a little of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, not in the way that he plays kind of with the brute physicality that Gardner-Johnson plays with. He's a little more fast, plays special teams as well, which is big, got the speed, which is big as well. And then another guy is going to be A.J. Green. No, not the receiver A.J. Green, but the cornerback A.J. Green. And again, he's a player that first of all, he's from Oklahoma State. I'm sorry about saying that there. But he can play a ton of different styles, there. Plays inside, outside. He can play both leverages with effectiveness. So good as your nickel corner. Could also play inside as well. He's got good height. He's got good frame. And he's a player that athleticism is going to be there. To me, people are saying strength is the problem. One-on-one balls are going to be the problem. I don't know. I think people say he's most comfortable when he gets attacked and be physical with receivers and press. But some people say even though he's comfortable there, he gets out-muscled. And at the pro level, that could be a problem. Kind of see what happens there. But again, I think it's interesting, something to look at. He's played, he's a starter, but people think get out physical. It's something you really don't want to see. But again, interesting there. The player you're really looking for is Fulton, though, because he can play, and you want to see more out of him for sure. So I think with all that said, it is time to wrap up this podcast. If you enjoy what we're doing here at the Who Dat Discussion, you can follow us on Twitter at the Who Dat Dis, on Instagram at Who Dat Discussion. Now follow us on YouTube and actually leave a subscription down below. Leave that like; it'd be extremely helpful. Thank you to everybody. Hope you guys listened to this episode. I know there's not that many moving parts. We just got a few pictures and my video here, but it was better than what we had before, and we're getting better each episode. We're hoping to add videos and stats next, but this was just a good first kind of thing for what we're trying to do here, so I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And on the audio side, hope you guys enjoyed it as well, as this was definitely a jam-packed episode. Got through a lot of prospects. Hope you guys enjoyed it and kind of what the Saints got to get. To me, if Biadasz is on the board or another player like him is on the board, you go pick him. If he's going to be ready to start right now, you pick him. If you can get an Eric McCoy, you pick him. If you don't see that guy there, go for the receiver, go for the cornerback, go for the next available player. This team is good enough where the best player available in the draft is going to be the best one. But with all that said, I want to say thank you, finish the deal, and who dat?